Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We will be starting shortly. So what I would encourage you all to do is, if you are planning to join in with this hands-on session, and I definitely encourage that you do, please do try and get the Gravitee API Management platform up and running on your local machine. So there are ways and means to do this. I'm just going to quickly pop a link in the chat for some instructions. So we'll get started in a few minutes. So do use this opportunity if you would like to join in to get up and running. I'm afraid we're going to only be able to offer very limited support with getting this up and running. So if you do have some challenges, this video is recorded. So this session will be recorded. You will be able to come back and refer to it. We also have a help space on our community forum, so I will show you that in a moment. So if you've got any questions either during the session getting started or afterwards, just drop a message in there. We'll be able to come and help you. But it should be relatively straightforward. The instructions there that I've just posted uses the Docker Compose file that we make available on the website. So if you've already got Docker running on your machine, it should be pretty straightforward to get everything up and running. If you're not doing the hands-on, that's fine too. Do enjoy. If you've got any questions, do ask. We're going to be picking those up as we go along. So I've got some of my lovely colleagues as well on the chat, and I'm sure they'll make themselves known in the public chat. So do say hello to them too. So anyway, whilst we wait, we'll start in a few minutes. So what would be great, if you've not already done so, do pop in the chat where you're dialing in from. So where are you watching? It's always great fun to see sort of people coming in from all over the world to come and join the session. So if you've not already done so, say hi in the chat. So we'll be getting started very shortly. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today on this hands-on session. So hopefully some of you who are joining in have got Gravitee API Management platform up and running on your local machine. So we've got the instructions here. We've got a little bit of time. So if you want to try and get that up and running in the background, great. If you're looking to just sit back and enjoy the show, that's also great as well. So we've got the public chat as well. So if you've got any questions coming in, please do put them in. We've also going to have a dedicated place on our community forum if you've got any questions after the session that you want to raise. Okay, so you have come to our first inaugural online training that we have held at Gravitee. So this is open to everybody. So commonly asked questions, we'll have a look in the housekeeping, but yes, this session is recorded, so you will be able to come back and watch it at a later date. If you'd like to share it with your colleagues or acquaintances, that's also going to be an option too. So let's get going. So we've generally split this training session into two parts. So we're going to run for approximately 90 minutes. And the first part we're going to cover is all about design first. So for those of you who have not come across design first, don't worry, we're going to give you a brief overview of that. But the reason why we're bringing this up now and mentioning it is because Gravitee, the whole setup of the Gravitee API platform is all about enabling and encouraging design first. So we're going to give you a bit of an overview of what it is, what does it look like, and what are the benefits. And then off the back of that, we're going to introduce the Bookshop scenario. So this is a very, very simple scenario that we've put together, like super cut down, but it's to try and illustrate this idea of thinking about this design first process when we look at building and designing APIs. So we're going to talk you through that use case. We're going to be talking about who the users are. We're going to then use this opportunity to then think about what kind of requirements might exist. And then what you will see is we'll start to incorporate all of these details when we do the hands-on activity. Then in part two, we're going to provide an overview of what API management is, along with providing an overview of the Gravitee API Management platform. Then we are going to get onto the hands-on element. So we are going to be, based on the example that we introduced earlier of the book case, we are then going to be creating the API proxy. So you'll see what's going on there for this bookshop scenario. We are going to be publishing that. we are going to be creating some documentation for it, as well as adding on some policies and plans which fit into the functional and non-functional requirements that we put together. And then last but not least, we will give you some resources about how you can continue your Gravitee journey. So, yes, so for some of you, thank you very much. I guess if you're hearing me now, then you know to press the play button. But yeah, thank you to all of those who are pointing out by pressing the play button on the player. Right, so very quickly, just some housekeeping. If you've got any questions, ask them in the chat. We'll try to answer them as we go along. So we won't be able to answer everything, so we'll try our best. We're going to be limited as to what support we can provide you if you've not already got the API management platform up and running in your local environment. We'll try what we can do around that. So we'll do what we can, and then we'll catch up on any questions that we're not able to answer during the session. Is this session recorded? Yes, it is. So you will be able to rewatch this session afterwards if you want to follow through what we've done. If you want to share this, again, you will have that option to do that. And last but not least, we have created a session study group. So this is a really great way for you all to introduce yourselves to each other. If you've got any questions, so this is the great place to ask if you get stuck with trying to get the Gravitee platform, API platform up and running on your local machine. If you've got any questions about what we've done during this session, if something doesn't make sense, if something comes to you after the session's finished in 90 minutes time, then do drop a question there. So we've got the link there, community.gravitee.io. So you will need to join our forum. You have a number of ways you can do that. You can join with either creating password and email old school, or you can use your social media. So you can use either Google login, or you can use your GitHub login if you've got that too. So this is what the forum looks like. So if you scroll down to the very bottom, we've got a section here called Conversation Corner. So if we just click into there, you will notice we have a section here which is called Study Session Group. So if you've got any questions, just pop a reply in here, and then this is how we can keep everything together and pick up those questions either now or later on once the session has concluded. And just a quick comment on the community forum. This is a great place to ask your questions. So very quickly, if you've got questions about the product, like as in if you need the support, something's not working properly or you can't get something working, you have the support section here. If you've got any suggestions about the product, you can pop them in there as well. You've got a show and tell to talk about what you're doing. So do go and explore the forum if you get the chance. Okay, right. So we've covered the housekeeping. I've got my lovely colleagues. So Georgie, Nick and Nico, and I think Toby as well, have all introduced themselves there. So we have got people there keeping an eye. So do keep those questions coming in. Right. As I've mentioned before, so this is your last warning. This should, I suspect, with all of the downloads and installs required, take about 10 minutes, obviously if you've got a good internet connection. So this is your last chance. If you are looking to join us hands-on, then do follow the instructions there. So you can get the Docker Compose file from our download page. You have a blog post here, just follow up the section that has setting up APIM. So that will give you all of the instructions to get you to the right place for following in. If you run out of time, don't panic. Like we've said, this session is recorded, so you can always watch the recording and then follow in once you've got that environment up and running. So let's talk about design first. And before we can talk about design first, let's talk about API first and what is it. So what effectively this approach does is changing that thinking away from building an application and then you go, well, okay, I've built this application. How is it going to go talk to other applications? I'm going to build an API off of that. Great. Now, what's happening, and this is growing at pace, is that many organizations are thinking about, flipping this thinking away from sort of API last to API first, where you first think about what your API is going to look like. So what purpose is it serving? Who's going to use it? What data is going to be there? What transformation is going to be done? So effectively what it's doing is treating APIs as first-class citizens. And it's this consideration that everything in the project is ultimately going to use an API. So that's where we start first. And therefore, what you're doing is you are going to be developing the API ahead of any other components that you go away and build. So there's many advantages to this. So first one is reusability. Because we are thinking about what purpose that API is serving, we can think about all of the other users who are going to use it. So we start off building once and then reusing many times. It encourages stakeholder collaboration. So you get everybody around the table. So you get your business users, you get the product owners, you get the developers, everybody who's involved in this process to think about what this needs to look like and what's the best way to design and build this. And ultimately, this is going to lend itself to lower application development costs because you are thinking about this key component first. So the fact that people can get involved, they know what they're building, they know what the application is going to look like, it's going to ultimately result in lower costs. But API first is not always design first. So we have two concepts here of design first and then code first when we think about API first. So both of these techniques are API first. But what has happened, or what typically happens when you think about an API first approach, is we go off, we get the business input, and then based on that business input, we go away and write some code. So we write the code to build out our API, and then off of the back of that code that we've built for the API, if we've been good citizens, we've been doing code-based documentation, we can then go off and generate some API documentation off the back of that. Now, what design first says is, well, hold it. Before we jump straight into this coding part of the journey, yes, we get the business input. And then from the business input, what we're going to do is we're going to think about and we're going to design our API. So when we say design, we're going to be thinking about what the what the flows are going to look like, what do our endpoints look like, what the resource is going to be, what's the example data. So what example data would we have for each of our endpoints? We're going to be thinking about these different elements. And then what we can do with this shell is we can then publish this. And what this allows us to do is, before a single line has been written to build the API itself, we can generate mocks. So what we can do is we can generate mocks that we can host. So people who are building applications that are going to be using the API, they can go off and use that. You've got people who need to look at the docs. Again, we can generate documentation off the back of any API specification we've designed. So again, people can read them and they understand what's going on. Then you've got the people who are actually building the API can go and code. So effectively, you can effectively in parallel do a bunch of activities because we did that design bit first before we build. So as we said, if we look at what the design first API lifecycle might look like, we've got this first element of this designing and discussing. So this is where we get all the stakeholders involved to think about what's this API going to look like. And then when we get the approvals, we then have this split out of different things going on. So we can generate the API documentation based off an API specification that we've created. We can build the mocks based off of the API specification. So we've got some ideas of what the sample data is, what would that look like. So we can create these things so people have an understanding of what this looks like. We can generate, again, sort of talked about documentation. And we also have code stops. So basically what we can do now is we can have the developers who are building the app that needs that API working in parallel with the developers who are building the API. So effectively they can go away and build in two separate streams, and you've removed that dependency of waiting for the API to be built first before you go away and do stuff. And like here, you can see immediately, you can do the building of the front end of your app. You can do any back-end development as well as the development of the API. And you can be building your automation testing as well, all at the same time. So what are the benefits? We have improved communication. So again, being able to get all of your developers on board and your stakeholders on board and your business users and the consumers of the API, everybody can get together, they can discuss what they need. So it means you make sure the first time around you get it right, or you're more likely to get it right the first time around. Very quickly, you can sort of iterate, you can loop feedback, any concerns, feedback, comments. You get into this space of doing product-driven APIs. So effectively, what product are you trying to deliver? This is what the API looks for it. So you're trying to do that nice separation of what's going on. Better developer experience. So just knowing that you've got the documentation ready, just knowing that you've got something to work against, really helpful. It helps drive this parallel development, as we talked about, and it is much easier to start thinking about how you enforce governance and security in all of this process. Okay, so let's look at our simple bookshop, which we are going to be doing the design first way. So I would like to introduce our book company with the fantastic name of Simple Books. And Simple Books is an online-only bookstore, and they sell many, many book titles. They have easy access browsing facility for people who are not logged in, who just want to have a look what's available in the catalogue, and they aim to deliver orders the following day. That is our company. So let's have a look at our requirements, and these are very, very much cut down. So this is just to give you a flavour of what's going on. So we've got two users that we're looking at here. We've got the browsers. So as we talked about before, they want to be able to visit the website and they want to anonymously view what's available in the inventory, so what books are available. And then we've got another type of user, which is the storeroom dispatcher. And these are employees of Simple Books that are going to be posting out the orders. So yes, there are many different users, there are many different scenarios. We're just keeping it really small for the purposes of this session. So thinking about this, we are going to have a number of requirements. So someone's just said it's frozen. Is it frozen for everybody, or is it just one person? Please ping in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on that. So for the bookshop requirements, we have a number of things. So do try and think about what they might be. I've got some up here just as an example, but some of the requirements we're going to have, based on thinking about what users we have, is we want to be able to show all of the titles currently available in inventory. So that's one requirement. Another requirement we would have is being able to show what titles need to be shipped to a specific address for logged in employees. So the important bit there, logged in employees. If you think about what data we're going to have, like customer address and name, we want to make sure that not everybody can see that. And with that as well, we're likely to have some non-functional requirements. So non-functional requirements are the kinds of requirements where a user may not necessarily think to specify it, but it's important for the purposes of the infrastructure, keeping systems healthy, that kind of thing. So some examples that we may have of non-functional requirements would be to rate limit how often anonymous users can view inventory. So what we don't want to happen is innocently, maybe there is a new title that comes out and we have millions of anonymous users around the world suddenly hitting our service at the same time, causing issues. But obviously there are malicious attacks too. So what can we do to protect our back-end systems so that we limit how often non-logged in people can view the inventory? And another thing we want to do as well is we want to be able to, as well as thinking about having a login, so obviously we want employees to log in, but what we want to do as well is, let's for argument's sake say Simple Books is based in the UK, so all of the staff are hired in from the UK. So what we can do to improve our security a little bit is we can specify a specific location where employees can log into all the systems. So for example, we can say we just want to make sure that only IP addresses from the UK will be allowed to log in. So those are our requirements that we've covered here. And if we think about what our API model is going to look like, then we think about what kind of resources we're going to have. We're going to have books and orders. So those are going to be our endpoints. So we've got something that allows us to view all the available books. So that's going to be using the get method. We want to also be able to view information about a particular book. And then we also want to be able to view what orders we have to ship out. So basically get a list of all the titles per order number along with the customer name and shipping address, as well as being able to view information about a particular order. So that is our requirements. Again, you can see this, we've engaged with all of our stakeholders, we've got an understanding of what their requirements are, we've worked with developers, we've worked with our data architects to figure out what this all looks like, and there we go. So we've now specified the requirements, what the model needs to include, and so forth. And for the purposes of our session today, we're going to be using the Open API Specification. So very quickly, for those of you who have not come across it before, it is an open source format for describing and documenting RESTful APIs, and it allows us to do a number of things, such as being able to provide descriptive information about our API. It allows us, as well as part of that descriptive information, it allows us to provide examples of what we would expect if you called a certain endpoint, obviously the endpoints themselves and the path items, and we can define reusable components. So for example, if there's certain parameters or examples or a schema that we reuse over and over again, we can define that within the schema and then call upon it. And the latest version 3.0, you can either write that in as a JSON or as YAML. So you've got a link there as well. Don't panic, I'm not going to get you to write the specification for our bookshop. If you would like to have a go, there is a link to the repo that we've got the examples in. So there is a hollowed out version if you want to have a go at populating itself, but not necessary for the purposes of this course. Okay, so if we think about what our API schema is going to have, so just a quick description of it. So if you did want to have a go at completing this, you will find it in the, if you cycle back in the GitHub link that we provide you, you will be able to see it. So I know that George has just provided the link in the chat. So if you go, if you go into that link and then eventually go back, you'll be able to see like a bookshop to complete. Yes. And as has been pointed out, that Open API is basically the new version of Swagger. So Swagger decided to open source their stuff. So it is now Open API. So you will have a look. So these are the various details we've got in there. So you can see we've got our two endpoints of books and orders. We are going to have, you can see they're both gets. You can see that they're searchable on ID. We've got some example attributes we would have for those. So if you dig in and have a look, you will see that's in there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about API management, and then we are going to get to the hands-on bit. So hopefully those of you who have had some success with getting the environment running on your local environment. I know I can see here Nick and Nico are working on helping you, so all good. Hopefully you're going to get there. So very quickly, what is API management? So API management is a set of processes, as it were, which can be, which is supported by software. And effectively, what it tries to do is it tries to help you in that process of designing, creating, and publishing APIs, all around the whole life cycle management of an API. So anything around, sort of like the various the testing versions or the deployment versions, if you need to deprecate something, managing the versions, all of that good stuff. It looks after that. It also allows you to enforce policies on how APIs are being used. So we can do things, as we mentioned before, we can do things about how do we rate limit how an API is being accessed? How can we throttle access to an API? What kind of rules and things do we need to apply? And we can also control access. And this is not a huge list of things API management can do. There is many more things, but we're just keeping it short. And another key thing is controlling access. So you think about the example we spoke about earlier. We want to be able to control access to one of the endpoints because only employees should be accessing that. So we're going to put some kind of control over that. But we can also further put policies to manage that control by looking at geographical access. And another key thing as well is we can use this to nurture the subscriber community. So what you can do is, so just quickly, I can see some curl links are coming in. So ignore the one about the gateway API key. We're not there yet later on when we're calling it. So just in case, if you try to run that now, you're going to get an error. So, okay. And the other thing as well we can do is nurture the subscriber community. So we have this concept of being able to subscribe users to our APIs, and then we can monitor what's going on. You know, we can have different levels of subscription and that kind of thing. Oh, and we can collect and analyze. So we talked about monitoring as well. So we can collect and analyze how people are using our APIs. So why would you use API management? So basically, it helps you to be dynamic and deal with rapid changes based on new requirements. So it allows you to manage what's going on. So let's say, for example, there is a change to an API. Your user doesn't need to know about that. If you decide to change the protocol that your API is using, not a problem. We can hide that away. The client who's consuming it does not need to know. And any kinds of changes around that. It's a one-stop shop for being able to manage things around authentication, so auth about people accessing it, authorization, are they allowed to be accessing it, and also managing access control. So effectively, maybe we want to change around when things happen or do some kind of shaping around when people can access things. And it just makes it significantly easier to manage the life cycle of an API. Okay. Right, so let's have a quick look at the components, or the main components of the API platform. So very quickly, let's have a look. We have basically got three main components, and then the bit holds in. So just had a question, will the slides be available afterwards? Yes, we'll make them available, don't worry. So effectively, if we look at what we've going on here, we have got three main web-based components and then an API. So let's just talk through each one. So first of all, we have got the API gateway, APIM gateway, and this is the core component of the platform. So basically, this is a lightweight and highly performant point where you will be deploying your API. So this is where you put your API proxies in place. That's going to be able to apply policies both on HTTP requests and responses. It allows you to deploy them across clouds and on premises. So this is where effectively, this is going to be the entry point for where your various clients are coming in. So your API consumers are going to be calling the gateway, and the gateway is then going to be in turn calling your actual APIs in your system. So that's what's going on there. Then we've got the API portal. So this is the developer portal. So this is where you as a developer want to go in and have a look at what APIs are available. So this is where you'll see them published, and we'll have a look at that in a bit during our session. So this is where, as a developer, you can go off and have a look at what's available. You can subscribe to an API depending on your login. You can log into the portal and you can have different views. It'll also allow you to provide feedback, see documentation on the API, and so forth. And then we've got the API console, and this is where your API publishers come in, and this is where they will go and they will create their APIs. So, for example, you know, they're going to define what the API looks like. This is where they're going to be defining what kind of subscriptions apply to it. This is where you would do things such as deciding whether it's going to be, you know, what life cycle stage that API is at, and so forth. So this is where you would do all of that, and this is where you would also decide what gets published onto the API portal. So that's like the control sort of center of the whole API bit. And then you've got the management API, and this effectively provides you with APIs for all of the components. So you have APIs for working with the gateway, the portal, and the console. So the portal and the console are UI-based interfaces. The API allows you to contact everything. So if you want to incorporate this as part of your CI/CD chain, as part of managing the APIs, this is where you can do it. So these are the key components, and you can manage the applications too. Okay, that's a quick, brief overview. We can definitely provide you resources and more detailed things around that, but that's just to get your head around the various components that we are looking at. Okay, so we think a little bit about API lifecycles in Gravitee. You have got the 4 elements, so the develop bit, so actually creating and publishing the API, that's what we're going to be doing shortly. Then we've got the documentation part, which we're also going to be doing. So this allows you, as we talked about, developers be able to see the documentation of your APIs. And when we're using the that Swagger file earlier, you can see that most of that work has been done for us already. Security, so we can talk about how the API is secured and accessed, so we're going to have a go at that. And then you can also monitor API usage from your consumers. And I'm going to quickly plug Nico because we have very nice dashboards within API management. Excuse me. Sorry about that. So we've got very good API management dashboards that you can look at within the product, but you can also connect it into Splunk if that's the kind of tool that you're looking at. And Nico did a blog post on it earlier. So for those of you who are interested to know more, do ping him in the chat. And to consume an API, and this will make more sense as we go through it, you have to create an application linked to an API plan. So we've got this concept of applications. We'll talk about those shortly. And you need to subscribe to the API. And then there's a workflow where you can accept or deny the request. So don't worry, we are going to have a go at that. Right, so it is time now. So we are going to have our first go at importing the schema, and we're going to be creating some documents off the back of it. So don't worry, I'm going to go first. And then, so I'm going to do the path, and then I'm going to give you some time to then have a go yourself. And don't panic if you miss a step. We'll show you how to sort it. So if something doesn't quite work as expected, ping it in the chat, and then we'll see. We'll triage it and see what happened. So let's give it a go. Right. So I'm already logged into my environment. So for those of you who log in for the first time, you may have something that pops up. So you just need to put in admin for the username, admin for the password. That will get you logged in, and then you'll end up with a dashboard. So this is what my dashboard looks like. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to import my Bookshop. So I'm going to go into APIs, going to add one. So this is the button here that you press to add an API. I'm going to be importing one. I'm going to choose a file. And I'm going to go into my very messy bucket of stuff. So I'm looking for Bookshop. So I have now got my Bookshop thing there. And then what I'm going to do here, just quickly talk about what's going on. So we've got that Swagger file. So we have a link there. Let me just quickly grab a copy of that. So this is the link that you want. So if you copy the one that's just come in, you might have a bit of an issue. Let me just quickly put this up. So this is what our specification looks like for the schema looks like for our API. So you can see we've got a bunch of stuff here, and the interesting stuff to draw your attention to is you'll be able to see in here, here's our data. So you can see some examples here of some sample data we've provided for books, for the order. So if I come into the management platform, when it says create documentation here, that is going to go away and create documentation based on the Swagger descriptor, the contents of that schema that we've put in. We want to create path mapping, so that's going to do the analytics. We're not going to be looking at the analytics in this session. But the other bit that's interesting is we want to click this bit here, create policies on paths. So this is going to go away and create all of the different API flows that you shall see shortly. And what we want to do as well is this apply mock policy. So this is going to create the mocks for us. And do you notice how we just saw in our schema that we had those sample strings for books and orders? That is going to use that to create the mocks. So we're going to make sure you've selected these. So you want to make sure you've selected the create policies on path and then apply mock policy. I am then going to import this. And we're in. So that's the first part. Then the next bit is selected mocks and docs. So the next thing we need to do is we need to create a plan. So don't worry about this bit here. The yellow bit, will come to that last. So the next thing we need to do is create a plan. Now, plans in Gravitee are effectively the way that we manage how people subscribe to an API. So we're going to create a keyless one to begin with. So just give it a name. I'm going to call it test. You can give these sensible descriptions. I'm just putting in silly answers. And then what we need to do here is tell it what kind of security type we're going to be using. So here I'm going to be using the keyless plan. So make sure you select keyless. And then don't worry about any of this rate limiting stuff. We're going to be doing that manually later. Just press save. And then we need to make sure that we've published this. So you can see the plan is in staging. So if we press this button here, this is now going to put it into published. So that's now published. So we've done our keyless plan. And the last thing we need to do is to deploy everything. So what we're going to do now is going to deploy. Okay. And let's just quickly check that. If we go back to details, just need to start the API. So we're going to start that. And okay. So if I now go to this address, so if I now go to the gateway address here, so actually that should be bookshop/books. So let's just quickly do that. So if I go to localhost Bookshop Books, there we go. There you can see. So it's deployed. And I can now call that, and I'm getting the mock data. I've not built a Bookshop API. And yeah, I've got something now as a developer. If I wanted to develop against this API, I've now got something to work with. So there we go. And I can do the same as well with orders. So if I put in orders, I get something back. If I go to books, so I've got ID. So if I do books and then ID, so this is the example. If I wanted to get a particular ID, I can. So you kind of get the idea of what's going on there. Okay, cool. Right. So that's all up and running. So I'm now going to give you about 10 or so minutes to have a go yourselves. So you've got the instructions there. I'll keep an eye on the chat if you've got any questions, and otherwise, have a go and give a shout in the chat when you're up and running. Okay, so we've spotted some interesting things that we need to look into with regards to the import. So thanks, Stephen and Valentin, for that. And yes, so hopefully you're all sorted. It looks like you've all sped through that. A quick question has come in about using the books and one ID. Yes, so Marcus has spotted the path with putting in the one. Yes, it will return book ID of one, but also if you put in two, it will return the book ID of one, just because that's the only mock data set we've got in there. But yes, that's the principle. That's how you would call back books if we're different book IDs, if that's what we're doing. Perfect. So we were all in business. Yep, that's it. That's the mock data plane now. Because just something to bear in mind very quickly when you are calling the different endpoints and putting the different values and that kind of thing in the searches, we don't have an API. The Bookshop API does not exist. There isn't a backend system that we're calling. What we are working with is that sort of the API proxy that's been deployed to the gateway. And the data that that's using is the data that we put in that Swagger file that we have imported. So that's what you're seeing there. So that's why you don't see the different versions or lots of different books. It's just because that API doesn't exist. But this is us using that design first principle where we haven't started building that Bookshop API yet. But we are in a place where we've got documentation, which we're going to be looking at shortly. We've got documentation. We've got a stub that we can call. We've got an API that we can call. So we can do all of the other stuff. So if you are sort of the QA engineer, you can start building some tests. If you are a developer building the website for the bookshop, you can start working on that. So you've got groups of people who can work in parallel without having to have that finished API just yet. So hopefully that makes sense. Look at the docs. So what you can do is you can customize the documentation that you provide. So let's have a quick look at the documentation. If I jump back in here and, if I click on this, will this jump me in? No. Portal. Bear with me one moment. I'm having one of those moments where I've forgotten how to jump to the developer portal. Bear with me 1 second. I'll get to the docs in a second. Let's just quickly talk about documentation. So what we can do here is we can generate documentation by the schema, and we have a couple of ways we can do this. So we can either, wrong page. So what we can do is we go into our APIs and select our API. So what we can do here is you see a section here that says documentation with pages. So what we can do is we can go into here, into pages, and actually let me just make this public so that everyone can see it. Okay, so what we can do here is in the documentation, if we've got the pages, and then what you can see here is we've got this thing here that says Swagger. So this is the documentation that has been built off of the back of that Swagger file that we imported earlier. So you can see here we've got information like a summary, books, what the responses would be, that kind of thing, like examples of the data. And then what you can see here is this is what's generated. So you can then have a look at the information. You can have a look at what the responses are. We can have a look at what the examples would be, that kind of thing going on there. And that's all been generated from that file that we imported earlier. And we had that tick box that we had to select the documentation to be generated. So we've got all of that going on there as well. And what we can do too is that was generated, but we can also add a file. So if we wanted to import our documentation, we can. So we've got a number of options here. So we can import Markdown, we can import a Swagger file. That's what we can use to generate it. We've already done it, so we're not going to do that again. If you want to import an Async API schema, you can do that too. So what we're going to do for our next part, so we talked about the fact that we generate the documentation off of the back of the schema that we imported earlier, and you can import things as well. But what we can do as well is we can create our own documentation. So what we're going to do for the next part, as we continue our journey here, will be to create some documentation. So I'm going to have a go quickly. So what we can do a number of things here. So we can say name of the bookshop, description, what the bookshop does, what the services are available, and an image. So we can go off and create something like this. So let's have a go at that quickly. So I'm going to jump back in here. I'm going to create a new page. So I'm going to press here. I am going to do mine in AsciiDoc because I can just about remember, I think, without having to look up things all the time, what I'm going to put in here. So I'm going to say this is Bookshop, or a simple bookshop. I'm going to set this as a home page. I'm going to be publishing this page, and then I'm going to put in a title. So welcome to Simple Bookshop. And I'm going to say like available APIs. So we know we've got books, books, and then we can say we've got orders, quick description, okay, Okay, happy days. And then we can just quickly add a picture. Actually, I'm going to leave the picture for now. If you want to have a go at adding a picture, be my guest. Let's have a look at that. So do that. So I've got my books, got my orders. Here's my very simple website. Oh, well, you know what? I'm going to put some pictures in there. So I'm going to go to Unsplash and then just do books. That'll do. Oh, style of books. Why not? Let's go for this. I wish my house was big enough to have this many books. So I'm going to copy image as link. So copy. Oh, let's do it this way. Copy image link. That's what I want. Okay, great. So I'm just going to quickly jump in here. Let's see if I can remember my. I think it's image. No, it's this way around, isn't it? Oops. I think it's image, link, and then square bracket, isn't it? There we go. Right, so there we go. I've got my picture on there. I mean, that's quite large. You get the idea. And I've done all of that. I've done it. And what I can do, I can save this. And you can see now this is my homepage. So I'm going to let you all have a go at putting together the page whilst I go and find the link for the console so we can then have a look at our documentation. So I'm going to hand it over to you. So I'll give you about 5 or so minutes just to have a little play with that, and then we shall continue on. Okay, so hopefully we've got some exciting pages to look at. We are going to have a look. So very quickly, the link you want to do to get to your developer portal, I've just posted in the chat. Sorry about that. So let me show you what that looks like. Some of you may have noticed I quickly nipped into the details here and did publish. So when it says publish the API, so you will want to do that, because what that will do is that's going to publish your Bookshop to the developer portal. And let's quickly jump into the developer portal now. So that's localhost /8085. And this is what you will see. Now, all of this is fully customizable. You can change what this looks like. Obviously, I've not done anything to make it look pretty, so that's why it looks like this. But let's go and take a look at our docs. So if I go over into the catalog and then click on all APIs, you will see that I now have a API called Bookshop. So I can click on View API. And this is where I get to see all of the information. So you can see here, this is the home page that I just created momentarily there. So I've got my very large picture and the details here. What I can do as well is if I want to rate this API, I can. You've got so this would list the address of how you'd access the API. So that's what was pulled out of the schema. And what I can do here is if I click on the documentation, let me just click documentation. So go to pages. So I just need to press that cloud picture, and then that's going to publish the docs. Ooh. There we go. So if I now go back into here and refresh, here is our documentation. This was all generated from our imported schema. So there you go. There we go. We have some documentations. That's pretty straightforward. So hopefully you all succeeded with that. And yep, as Valentina said as well, it should be visible in the portal. So well done, everybody. You've got that all sorted and in business. So this is the developer portal. This is where we can see everything. So that's all good. Let's start talking about plans and applications. So what we've done so far, we've imported the specification, which we've used to generate our API, which would be a proxy for an actual API that we'd be using. We have added a plan on that. And obviously we've done some documentation, but let's talk a little bit about plans and subscriptions. So once we've registered the public, what you can do is you manage your subscription, you manage that access to the API through the use of plans. So this is what Gravitee does. And this is a key feature, and it allows you to do a number of things because you can apply at the plan level any kind of flows or any kinds of authentication, anything that is applicable to everything that's associated with that API. So it's really powerful to do that. And you can see the example here is the fact that as an application, and we'll talk about this concept of application shortly, that it subscribes to a plan, and then the plan's going to manage, depending on which one you subscribe to, that's going to manage that access to that API. And effectively, it offers you that service and access layer on top of your APIs. And this is where you can specify things like the rate limiting, any throttling, what kind of validation you want to do, any kind of mutation, that kind of thing that can be applied to a specific application. So again, it fits into this idea of API as a product, and there's a number of things we can do, such as we can apply read-only access, we can apply rate limiting, and we're going to be doing rate limiting shortly as part of the API discovery. And it allows us to differentiate the API experience based on user groups. So for example, let's say, well, we're going to have two user experiences with our bookshop. So we've got the anonymous user experience where you don't need to be logging in to have a look at books, but we're going to rate limit you. Whereas you've got the experience as an employee where you are allowed to log in. You're not going to be rate limited to look at books, and you are going to be able to get all the information so you can send those books. And it allows you to apply business rules by default across all of your endpoints rather than having to sort out policies for each one. And it is that contract between the application, the thing that's calling the API, and the API itself. It adds that security. You can apply broad brush policies across things, and ultimately to be able to consume an API. So for example, to consume the Bookshop API, so we're calling those two endpoints, we needed to create that keyless plan. And this is true of everything. You will always need a plan to proceed. So, okay, we've got anonymous plan. Now it's time to create a plan for the employees. So I will leave those instructions up for you. I'm going to quickly create one now. So let's do this. I am going to just jump back over here. I am going to go into plans. I'm going to create a new one. I will try not to be lazy. I'll give it a sensible name. So let's do employee login, employee access, go to the next page. I am going to go for an API key for this. And I'm going to press next, and I'm going to save this. And we've now created the employee login. So again, I'm going to publish. I'm going to deploy my API. So that is all up. So we've done all the instructions here. Yep, done this. And we can now test it. So I'm going to just stick to browser. So if I go to orders, for example here, I should be greeted with an error message. Access this. So I'm going to let you have a think about it and ping in the chat what do you think's happened. But I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to set up that plan. Do ping in chat what's not working. Why is it not going as expected? Let's do a bit of participation on this. So I'll give you a couple of minutes for that. Okay, hopefully you've all got the new plan added in. And we have some great answers about what's happening. So yeah, all of you, I think all of you have got bits of the answer. And if we all put them together, then you get the answer. And at the moment, we've not done anything to say how this new plan should be used. So we've got that new plan in. And as you've all rightly pointed, we've still got a keyless plan there. We've not said used, so everything's just going to flow through that keyless plan. So we need to do something, as Valentina said, we need to do something to add an endpoint which is only accessible via this plan. So yes, good collective thinking there. So we need to make some changes to the plans. At the moment, everything will just go to the anonymous plan. So what we've not done yet, and I do apologize, if we quickly jump into the design, so this is going to show us all of the different flows that we've got going on. So for example here, Oh, I like that, Karen. I like the question. The question to us is, why is your business still able to see the data? Because we haven't yet done the finishing setup to get the points. So yeah, so all of you should be seeing exactly the same thing. So if we jump here in design, and what you can see here is we can see these are our two plans here, employee login and test. Test, I should rename that to keyless plan. I'm sorry, bear with me. And then here we've got our 4 different flows. And you can see here, there's nothing at the moment. We don't have anything. Everything can just flow through test, through the keyless plan, and everything's accessible. So we need to do something to change that. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a filter policy. And what we're going to say, we're going to filter it on the anonymous. We're going to say we want you to disallow anything that has caused the orders endpoint. We're going to disallow it so you can't access it. So let's do that now. I am going to go into my test workflow. I'm going to look for filter, resource filtering. I'm going to drop that policy on there. And then what I'm going to say is, I'm just going to shuffle this out the way, is I want to disallow, I believe it's going to be orders star. I think I may have to put books. We'll test this in a second. Bookshop/orders. And if I save this, oh dear. Unfortunately, this pops up in a really frustrating error, and I can't see. So I want to tell it the get. We don't want to allow it to do gets. I'm sorry about it if you've got a tiny little session in there. Right, okay, so we now save this. And save. We need to deploy this again. And hopefully, if we now go back here, denied, there we go. So, method not allowed whilst accessing this resource. No, so I think there's something not quite right here, because I should be getting an error about not having the access. I will double check what I've put in the thing there. But basically, you can see now we've done filtering on there. Whereas if I go into books, I still have access to books. So I just can't access that one there. Okay. So we've got that one sorted. Now we can sort out the login. So very quickly, so we've done that. So I'm going to add a filter. I'm going to give you a chance to do that shortly as well. So we've added the sort of disallowed the orders. And then let's talk about applications, because this is where we're going to have to create a subscription to be able to access the orders endpoint. So let's talk about applications. So applications are a way for consumers to use an API. So you don't need to create an application if you are using the keyless plan. However, if you are if you want to use a keyed plan, then you have to create this contract, this subscription to the different plans. And we do that using this thing called an application. And it's a way for the API publishers to control and regulate how people are accessing their APIs. So maybe we've got a premium plan, maybe we've got like the basic plan, maybe we've got the free plan, and we can effectively regulate and see who's using what and allow people to subscribe to them. And typical applications are web apps, native applications, any kind of bash or jobs that are using which are accessing the data. And like we said, because we've now got a non-keyless plan, we need to create an application to be able to access the employee stuff. And you can do them both from the APIM console and the portal. So for an example, let's do it from the portal. So I'm going to jump into here. Let's go back to this, and I've got the subscribe button here. So if I click on subscribe, I want to subscribe to the employee login. I am going to just do, I haven't made an application yet, so it's just doing the default one. I'm going to do next. Going to validate this request. And then what happens is if I go back into the portal here, I should get There we go. I've got a notification here. You can see it's popped up. And that's because I've requested access to that plan. So what I need to do here is just validate that. And I'm going to accept this application. I am going to not bother with, you can see you can add start dates and end dates. I'm just going to do all of this. And all of this can be automated as well. So you don't have to have this manual process if you don't want. And now I have got this up and running and I've got a key so I can go off and access this. So I'm going to give you the chance now to do the same thing. So you've got the same example you're going to do there with creating an application and getting that subscription sorted. I'm also going to just quickly show you me accessing this now to hopefully show it's all working. Well, actually, you can do that via, if you want to test this out, you can do it via Postman. I'm going to do it via a curl. But anyway, set up your application, set up that, you've already set up the plan, set up that filter, and then have a go at running it. So I'll just ping, if you're going to do a curl option, let me just give you how you can run that. So I'll give you a few minutes for that and let me know how you get on. Okay, I think I've made another typo with this, so yes. Sorry about that. I will correct this. So thank you very much for all of the feedback you're getting. I do apologise with some of the buggy content that we've got. So I do apologise with that. Thank you very much for feedback. We will make these corrections, put the corrections in. So I really hope this doesn't put you off this experience and you're still learning some good things and getting that hands-on experience. So my apologies about this. So hopefully that, hopefully that gets sorted. I'll make those updates accordingly. So thank you very much. Okay. So we've got that. Hopefully you more or less have this up and running. Yes, I know. Yes, like learn from my mistakes. Good point made there. So, okay, cool. We've got this. We are slowly running to time or running out of time. So let's quickly these bits. So we've got given you the example there. If you want to curl it, hopefully you've got that sorted. So let's very quickly talk about policies and API flows. So we've already used some policies. We've used the mocks policy. We've used the filter as well. So very quickly, what are these policies? So effectively, they allow you to modify the behavior of either a request or response flow, which means we can do lots of interesting things. We can apply inbound and outbound rules. We can do things like guaranteeing that business rules are fulfilled. We can do things such as chaining lots of policies together in some sort of logical order to do a set thing. We can combine them, use plain configuration, or we can start coupling HTTP paths and verbs. We also have the support for expression language. So if you want to do some really cool dynamic stuff, you can. And we use, and they're used on resources. So what you saw, designer, you saw we had some API flows. And what we can do, so as well as doing the flows on plans, we can apply those onto those specific flows as well. So as you saw that we saw some of the policies on there. We can also add flows. So those were generated when we imported that Swagger file earlier. So you saw we imported that and we had some specifications there, and that's how it's generated flows. But what we can do as well is we can add some more on there. So we're going to have a go at doing that shortly. And we've got lots and lots of different policies available with the Gravitee platform. So we've got lots of stuff around security. We've got things around performance. We can do caching. We've got lots of transformation policies. So this is not only transforming the data, but we can also do protocol mediation and that kind of stuff. And we can also, do mocks and dynamic routing. So we've seen examples of the mock policy in use. We've seen an example of the filtering we did as a policy as well. So you've got some flavour of those. So what we're going to do, I think this is going to be the last one that we do so that we've got enough time to wrap up the end of the session. So what we're going to have a go at is creating a new mock policy. So we're going to create a new path called, a new flow called mock. We're going to drag and drop a mock policy, and we're going to put some data in there, and you can do whatever you like. So I'm going to have a quick go. So I'm going to go off, I'm going to create a new flow. So I'm going to press this plus here. I'm going to call this flow, I'm going to call it mock example. Why not? I'm going to change that path to mock so that I can call it straight with, I can call that with bookshop/mock. It's going to be we're going to post. Get, want to get. And I'm not going to bother any conditions. So that is my policy. Quickly save this. Saves, that's all saved. And where's my mock? Oh, no, sorry. You have to press the tick. My apologies around that. So let's try again. So we're going to do this. It's going to be mocks. Oh, hang on. Go here. Right. Get rid of this. Start again. Right. Got mocks. Path is mock. We are going to add get. And I'm going to save this with the tick. That's all saved. I think I've already pressed endpoint. I think I need to add an extra one. That's this one mocks here. I'm now going to add a mock policy on here. I'm just going to put anything in here. So I'm just going to give this a 200. And my response body is just going to be test stuff. I'm going to save this. Save. There's my mock policy on there. I'm now going to deploy this. So if I now jump over here and I go to mock, there we go, test stuff. There you go. So I've created a new API flow with a mock policy on there. So I'll give you a couple of minutes for that, and then we will wrap up. So give me a shout how you get on, and then we will wrap up for the session. Okay, hopefully we are all here. You've all managed to create a new flow called, whatever you want to call it. I've called it mocks, that you've been able to, you've set the path there, you've set it as a get method, that in the actual policy itself, we are going to just return a 200, or you can return whatever you like, returning a 200, and a sort of very basic response body. So you can start to get a flavor of how we can create these mocks if we want to quickly iterate or change something for further on. So hopefully you've all got that up and running, and then again you can just go over here and call it. So like here I've called it bookshop/mock, and I've got my test stuff back. So hopefully you've all got that up and running. So we're going to leave the rate limiting policy. So these slides are going to be available to you. So we'll get an email out to you, so you'll be able to follow through the bits that we've missed. So we've still got the rate limit, and we've got the IP filtering. So we'll share those slides with you so that you can have a go at this in your own time, in your leisure. And what I wanted to do is just quickly come to this. So what next? Do have a go at having a play with importing other specs. So for example, you've got the pet store, which is a really popular Swagger one. Come up with your own one and just have a go at importing them or building your own. We would love to have your feedback. So please do, if you've got some time, just let us know what could we do better with the training. So I'm just going to quickly drop a link in the chat. So please do let us know what we can do better. We also have the YouTube channel, so we have lots of videos on there. So this video will make its way onto YouTube as well. We've got blogs, lots of great blogs coming in there. Again, a big plug for Nico's blog recently that he's done on doing your metrics with Splunk. And again, if you've got any questions, do come and join us in the community forum. ask your questions there. Reach out to me if you've got any questions. Otherwise, I hope you've had a great time with this session. I hope you've learned something useful, that you've enjoyed having this opportunity to do some hands-on stuff. And thank you very much for your time. And we look forward to seeing you on our next event. Thank you very much. Take care and have a wonderful day.